York City. My favorite city in the world. Hi, I'm Alok. As in, tell me a joke, Alok. According to your favorite publications, I've been an up-and-coming artist for the past decade. I'm hoping that if I keep it up at this rate, they're gonna call me an emerging talent in my obituary. Whenever I don't sell enough tickets to my shows and my agents are upset with me, I remind them that my fan base is full of empaths who believe in creating space for other people. So even if they aren't showing up, they're showing up. You know what I mean? It's kind of a win-win situation for all parties involved. Tonight's show is called Biology. So if people try to boycott it, they are erasing biology, which is incredibly hypocritical. Am I calling it biology to be tongue-in-cheek? Well, hot take, tongues and cheeks are in fact both biological, so, right? Every time people tell us as trans people that we can't change biology, I'm like, nice haircut. Personally, I love biology because it's constantly changing and I have commitment issues. Tonight, I want to make the argument that trans people are human. By which I mean insufferable, just like you. Transphobia is merely a distraction from our shared humanity. The real biological truth that's being erased isn't gender, it's that we die. Okay, that was really awkward. Spoiler alert, like, you're gonna die, girl. Like, When you really think about it, from the perspective of death, most of living is just kind of stand-up comedy. And especially all those absurd antics we do, like wasting our finite and precious moments on Earth, hating other people. At the end of the day, we are all beautifully and biologically mortal. On your deathbed, are you really still gonna be freaking out because that bitch used they, them pronouns? In tonight's show, I'm going to be weaving comedy with poetry because I identify as a pretentious piece of shit. And because I genuinely believe it's the most honest reflection on what it means to be alive. Being human means we have to learn how to hold both, our heartbreak and our humor, our grief and our gratitude. Being human means it is possible to be both the happiest and the saddest we've ever been at the same time. I won't tell you when I'm doing what, because that's just how life is. Just when you feel like everything is secure, the rug is pulled from beneath your feet and everything changes again. And I know that a lot of people in this room are allergic to both dairy and vulnerability, so I want to reassure you that there are going to be plenty of jokes tonight, okay? I come from an Asian household, which means I understand the importance of getting a good deal. So actually, my jokes each have like 5 jokes in them when you really think about it. So you're definitely getting a bang for your buck, okay? Even my humor is overachieving. I know that some people are gonna say, that's not stand-up. Darling, I'm standing the entire freaking show. And my knee pain is a testament to that fact. Some people are gonna say, that's not comedy, it's theater. It can't be theater because it's actually sold out. Some people are gonna say, that's not stand-up, it's a one-man show. No, it's a one-man in a dress show. An important distinction, because I think it's high time that we start protecting jokes from men in pants. A real crisis facing this nation, if you ask me. Protect jokes from men in pants. I know you might not be used to comic with this caliber of fashion sense, but I figured if you were already all going to laugh at me outside, I might as well gather you in one place and charge you for it. So if you're not gonna refer to me as a comedian, then at least refer to me as an entrepreneur. There's stand-up comedy, and there's lie-down comedy. And that's heterosexuality. I'm just joking. Can't you take a joke? We love jokes. Sounds like we have some straight people in the crowd tonight. Wow. Congratulations. Thank you for being you. Namaste. Stay, bitch, stay. This is a safe space for members of the straight community. You're allowed to laugh at me for the next hour and not get called transphobic. Honestly, I'm a major fangirl of you guys. That was me being culturally sensitive. You guys. I follow some of your community leaders on Instagram, okay? It's important to diversify your feed, don't judge me. Cisgender, heterosexual influencers teach me so much about love and light. I've been watching from afar, and I think I finally get it. Heterosexuality is a masochistic endurance performance art piece where you run into a wall over and over again, and you're miserable, but you just keep going because brunch. And those gender reveals y'all been doing on the gram, oh my God. I didn't want to ask a straight person about your culture, so I Googled it. Apparently someone recently lit a firecracker at a party, causing one of the biggest wildfires in California, decimating like 23,000 acres, but somehow leaving gender norms intact. It's a real rager. Actually, Burning Man. People say that we're brave and inspirational, but we've got nothing on you guys. We just do anal. Y'all do arson, and that's a whole nother level, okay? I'm not judging. Personally, I think it's kind of hot. But I was wondering, does that make it cultural appropriation for me to still identify as a flaming homosexual? You have to check in. People are so sensitive. You have to check in. I don't want to burn any bridges, okay? I know that you guys care about us, like, a lot. I feel it. Honestly, I feel it. That's why every time I cross the street, I imagine how devastated people would be if I got hit by a car and died. Imagine the one non-binary intern at the paper, like, hey everyone, Alok used they, them pronouns. That's not grammatically correct. But they're kind of like dead, actually. So is grammar, apparently. A double homicide. So messed up. So as a courtesy, I've decided to ghostwrite some headlines should this tragedy ever occur. Crossdresser gets crossed. gay movement stopped in its tracks. They, them, were. The Capitol insurrection riot was a moment of awakening for me. I didn't understand how people were so angry and like rioting and looting and stuff. I found it very unbecoming. So I joined a book club. We read authors who identify as white, straight, and angry in order to better understand the tendency towards temper tantrums in that community. It was an incredibly healing journey for me. When I realized I had to use my privileges to show up for marginalized communities. I was ready to Mother Teresa those guys, so. I took a gap year to become fluent in white heterosexuality. I did a cultural immersion program, online of course, and it involved watching Stranger Things over and over and over and over again. And I now serve as an official interpreter for this often misunderstood community. Turns out, straight people do have drag queens. They're called politicians. What you do in this elaborate art form is you try to dress up in the ugliest outfits possible and tell as many lies as you can, because a lot of people have unprocessed daddy issues, so they get very excited when men lie to them in public because it reminds them of home, actually. So the more that you lie, the more that you win. It's that simple. And they do have drag shows every once in a while called elections. And if you win one of those, you get like sponsored cash prizes from Fortune 500 companies. It's a pretty sweet gig. I thought it was a lot of work, but my friend was telling me it's kind of like a part-time hustle. Like you don't actually need to do anything. You just kind of like tweet thoughts and prayers every once in a while. I try to keep up electoral politics, I do. I know it's important. They just use all these big words that I can't wrap my head around. Like majority. They're like, we need to appeal to majority issues. The majority of people. But then I remember that numbers only recently entered white people's awareness, historically speaking, thanks to Arab introduction. So not all of them still know how to count yet. So actually, when they say majority, what they're referring to is insecure white men. And when they say minority, they're referring to the roughly 7.2 billion of us still struggling from the legacy of them, they, theirs. How's that for a lesson on pronouns? I love being a minority. It's so much fun. It's like every day is the original metaverse. I never know what I'm gonna get. I was recently back home in Texas, and my Uber driver was like, Alok. That's the strangest name I've ever seen. How do you spell that? I mean, it was written right there on the phone screen, actually. But I want to commend him for his courage. I was excited to learn about a new culture, too, so I asked my driver, Nathan, what his name meant in his culture. Nathan, what does your name mean in your culture? He said, well, Alok, Aluka, Malaka, Nathan is a sacred name to the American people. It speaks to our greatness as a civilization. It means oil spill. That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing your exotic culture with the whole entire world. It's my life passion to help uplift backwards communities who still believe in dividing billions of complex souls into one of two genders. Who else is gonna do this work? I woke up and chose charity. I just have some questions, okay? Why do you guys dress like that? Apparently, in your society, you're not supposed to appear naked in public, but you're required to dress in a way that broadcasts your genitals to complete strangers. I was trying to use the restroom earlier, and the symbol that you've created for a woman is a dress. In your culture, you believe that only people with certain body parts should be wearing dresses. Personally, I think it's really nasty how you sexualize clothing like that. Like clothing is some sort of elaborate cruising ritual that you use to alert one another what you have down there. Like fashion is one big glorified dick pic. I don't want my kids around that energy. I want to teach them that fashion is about color and textiles and prints, not genitals. It's gross. In your society, the doctors practice a highly advanced, rigorous, scientific, medical scientific practice to determine the gender of a child when it's born. It's called heterosexual hieroglyphics, where they seek to decipher the shape of the genital in order to prophesize the future child's emotional range, domestic duties and responsibilities, career trajectories, income brackets, color preferences, and clothing options for the rest of their lives until they die. Here I was, thinking that the way we told people's gender was by their emotional availability. Are they ghosting you? Definitely a dude. Or at least an air sign. Sorry, that was not my personal experience, that was science. Sorry, that was me taking my personal feelings and calling them science to make them seem more legitimate. Turns out, non-trans people do have gender pronouns. I didn't know that. And they deserve to be respected because they are not preferred. They are peer-reviewed. You might even say that their pronouns are biological, or to be even more culturally sensitive, one must bark that word, kind of like a guttural bark, like biological, as a way to affirm their manhood and womanhood. That's very important during these times. Affirm it, biological. It's a way of protesting how science continues to be erased. It's a real issue. That's why every once in a while I Google science to see what information I can pick and choose in order to reinforce my pre-existent worldview. And I have been learning some incredible science that I just have to share. I recently read some cutting-edge data from a listicle that taught me that members of the biological men's males community are incapable of painting their fingernails because it melts their fingertips, rendering them gecko hands, making them incapable of fulfilling their genetic destiny to play the game of Halo. It's a real crisis facing masculinity, and we need to be talking about it. Science makes everything make sense. I love it. Like at first I was confused. You mean to tell me that white people colonized the entire world, stole everyone's cutest stuff, and you call that interior design? The home renovation budget was infinity. And you delivered monochrome. Like, something does not add up here. Imagine what I could have done with that budget. But then, I read new scientific data from a university so prestigious, it happens to be prestigious. And I learned that white people demonstrate a hormonal affinity for beige. It is hardwired in their DNA. Hardwired in his and her DNA. They have no other options. They can't even see color. Being an ally is extremely hard work. And sometimes I ask myself, why do I continue to do this? I'm exhausted, I'm depleted, I don't have capacity anymore. But then I remember that ultimately I have the most to gain, so I keep going. Like, I learn new things. Who doesn't love learning? It's beautiful. Yeah, shout out to learning. Like, for example, did you know that white people make art? I didn't know that. I didn't know that. What's white art? Drawing borders between countries? We're gonna call this one Mexico. That is such an interesting shape that you're making, Robert. So abstract. You've really got a knack for this. Keep it up. I think the most powerful realization I've had doing this work is I learned that many white straight people genuinely believe that they're the only people on earth capable of experiencing pain. The rest of us just have one emotion: anger. And it's pretty convincing. So the other day when I stubbed my toe, I had to say, ouch, like I imagined Lana Del Rey would, in order to believe my own pain. When Grandpa died, the hospice nurses told us that his death would be painless. I mistakenly thought that meant it would be quick. They told us that his hearing would be the last to go, so we converted that hospital room into a concert venue with an all-star lineup that spanned the globe. Life has never made sense like it did until I began to see my 92-year-old grandfather as my child, like some umbilical cord stretched across generations and looped us together in a disheveled bow. I kept holding his hand and whispering in his ears, "It's okay to go. You don't have to be afraid." I couldn't tell if I was speaking to him or to me. In the last months of his life, I lived in parentheses. They're the things that I said, and they're the things that I felt. When he told me that he wanted to die, I said, okay, and then I went and cried in the other room. When the dementia came in like a reverse sunset, I told him that things were going to get better. I've never seen a more compelling case for lying than him sleeping next to his books because he couldn't read them anymore. Sometimes truth is a prescription with too many side effects. So we lie to the people we love. We cradle them in our perjury, beam promises like those devices that project stars on a ceiling like, yes, these are real. This galaxy, it is yours. I will make the universe bend for you. Everything you want is yours. Shortly after I was born, I peed on my grandpa like a sprinkler. And he laughed and smiled with so much mirth because I was alive And when he looked at me, he felt it too, being alive. When I was a kid, I wanted to become him desperately. I used to wear his corduroy blazers, study his gestures, mimic the pauses he made between sentences, the ink blots he left on the table, every pair of glasses, the way that he buttoned his shirts, the way that he burped, how crass, how magnificent the way that he burped, the way that he typed each key on the keyboard individually, as if clicking S could drop a bomb somewhere, the way that he was anxious 7, 6, 5 hours before anyone in the house had a flight, the way that he giggled, even the way he swore felt cinematic, like my grandfather, he invented anger. Love means noticing everything about someone, developing an acute sensitivity to the aliveness of everything they touch, and that's precisely why it's so lethal. Because then you end up missing everything when it's gone. The day he died, I took a walk escorted by the bitter Brooklyn wind. My tears literally froze to my face, so I laughed, and then I sobbed in a yoga pose that felt oddly devotional, like I was discovering God there on the kitchen tiles, next to stray arm hair and pasta shells from earlier, and me, that messy playground of organs who try so valiantly to protect me but failed this time. I wept in the shower, the way that they do in the movies. I wasted so much water, my body, it pruned. These are the things we have to do to make the strange familiar when the familiar becomes so fucking strange. Death and bed, hospital and gown. These are words that require chaperones to keep them apart. And yet here we all were together in his hospital room with his body all swollen up like a grotesque melon. I was mad that no one had ever told me that this is what a peaceful death looks like. That no one had ever told me that dying is the longest verb, is a material that stretches and stretches until it suddenly snaps back into your face like a yo-yo trick gone wrong. I was angry at every single story and poem and song, including this one, that so flippantly used the word died, as if dying is just something that happens simply and immediately, not something that unfurls, that festers, that accidentally cuts itself while shaving, that falls in the bathroom, that commutes to and from the emergency room, that bills, that peers at you with a kind of innocence that makes you forgive everything, that forgets his name, that forgets the year, that calls you on the phone and tells you to take him back to India, that makes you lie. Sure thing, tomorrow. It took him 6 days to die. No food, no water, just the morphine drip. He, a delicate eyelash held together with tubes. The hospice nurses said that when it takes someone this long to pass, it's because some part of them is unwilling to let go. They had a drug for that too, something to help relieve the existential suffering. My grandfather, a refugee, spoke many languages, among them hunger. From a young age, he converted a large chunk of his heart into a graveyard, where he buried all the people he watched die with his own eyes, his eyes. If you look deep enough in them, had tenants squatting there for years. These memories that haunted him and kept him up all night as he paced back and forth in the hallway, his feet, they were so used to moving. Trauma means the living die many deaths. Does that make sense? No, of course it doesn't. Like, none of this makes sense. Like how one day he would tell me that he was ready to go, and the next he would hold my face in his palm screaming, "Alok, I am dying, do something, I'm dying." And I, the liar who loved him, said, "No, you're not." Told him to go back to eating his lunch, and he'd do just that. At his funeral, I could barely recognize him. I think it's because I'd never seen him truly relax before. No longer haggard from the labor of living, there was a stillness to him that I didn't think was possible for this man who was the physical embodiment of the word fidget. In the last months of his life, I used to read him stories before he'd go to sleep. He'd always doze off, so I'd stop, and then, like clockwork, he'd wake up every time and tell me to keep reading, so I would. Sometimes I'd skip entire pages just to see if he noticed. He didn't. One time I started crying while reading, and I couldn't stop because I thought about him dying. No, I was selfish. I thought about me losing him, becoming an orphaned metaphor with no reference point, a blue dot pulsating in the middle of a gray expanse, but I kept reading, and the words, they became indistinguishable, like a smush bug, and my tears, they punctuated the pages like the purpose of reading out loud is precisely to weep, and my grandfather, he kept listening. And I'd like to think that it was less about the words and more about me being the one reading them. That at the end of his life, I became that which he was for me, flesh that finally felt more real than fiction, a hand to hold in the dark, the last sound at the end of a long, long day before rest. As trans people, we can't get any rest these days. It's wild, despite the fact that we're dealing with some of the worst discrimination ever. The media continues to depict us as the dangerous ones. It's been particularly brutal for those of us who are mediocre transgender athletes. Despite the fact that we lose the majority of the sports the majority of the time, the press just reports the few times that we accidentally win, leading to the widespread misconception that we have an unfair biological advantage to win every sport every time, which is frankly a lot of pressure. I never thought I'd have to come out on stages and say something I thought we already all agreed on. Trans people are losers. Weren't you the ones making fun of me for being bad at sports for like my entire life? And now all of a sudden I'm supposed to win an Olympic gold medal? Make up your freaking mind, sissy! At this point, I propose that we need to add a new category to the Olympics to see which cis person can jump to a conclusion faster. They're getting better and better every day. It's amazing. I've always been awful at sports. I was so bad at soccer as a kid that my dad used to have to promise me Chinese takeout if I did anything on the field. The bar was so low that I didn't even need to score a goal. I needed the incentive of an egg roll to kick some grass. So I'd be there on the opposite side of the field as the ball, going something like this. Dad. 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 And then my dad would run on the field like, my boy! I'm so proud of you! And then the grass would be side-eyeing my dad like, mate, are you serious? You might want to reconsider your word choice. It's more of a gentle caress than a kick. And besides, she's about to go home and make a gown out of the bathroom towel. The reason that the grass had a pseudo-British accent and my traumatic childhood narration of my childhood sports trauma is because the closest I've come to sports ever since is watching Ted Lasso. Let us lose in peace. I can't tell if I'm more hurt by all the blatant lies that people spread about me online or the fact that they always make me look washed out on conservative meme pages. It's a hate crime. I'm about to share something extremely brave, maybe even tender, depending on your star sign. Sepia is homophobia. Nobody looks cute in sepia, girl. And the internet trolls figured this out first. So they've only been showing you photos of trans people and bad lighting in sepia, leading to escalating transphobia across the entire world. Honestly, I can empathize. Because if I only saw photos of us looking like that, I'd hate us too. You have a disorder. You are disgusting. This is degenerate. Fix your face. The only thing that helped me get through this is I remember that right-wing bloggers are my publicists. At this point, they have done more to spread my message than my entire talent agency for free. Like, I'm considering offering them a commission. Sometimes it feels like they're working harder than trans people to promote trans visibility. It's wild. I'm like, thank you, I admire the hustle. They're so furious that you're spending this time with me right now. How dare you support this man in a dress? Alok, or Jesus? I'm a little confused, all right? On the one hand, they're telling you that a brown bearded man in a dress is supposed to save the world. They're telling you that a brown bearded man in a dress is supposed to end the world. So I started to do some self-education, as any good ally should. And I learned that cognitive dissonance is a performance art tradition in the straight community. Things just made sense again. Keep it up, you guys. I hear you. Enough with the division, all right? We need to come together. I love that idea. I've just never worked with as diverse an individual as an armed white supremacist before, but I'm so open to that. Like, that's amazing. I'm sure we have a lot in common, right? We both love graphic t-shirts. Racists want to kill me, and sometimes I want to kill myself. That was dark. Kind of like the future of our democracy. One issue facing conservatives is that they're trying to be homophobic, but their insults are so boring and unoriginal that they're actually being heterophobic because they make them look bad. One issue facing trans people is that we're too smart to get jobs. So I started to think, and I was like, hold on. What if conservatives hired trans people as hate speech editors? Here's what that could look like. On my right, I am Felicity, an anti-trans blogger based part-time in my own comment section. Speak your truth, Felicity, don't hold back. You hairy animal! On my left, I am renowned non-binary community leader, Clippy from Microsoft Word document. I hate to break it to you, Felicity, but we are all, in fact, hairy animals. Welcome, you've got mammal. An earnest plea, if you won't diversify your country, then at least diversify your disrespect. Hire queer people to interior decorate your minds, and together we can make insults great again. Honestly, it's the TERFs that are the worst, right? Right. These anti-trans feminists. At first I was like, how do you spot a TERF? And then I realized they all have Death Eater tattoos. These anti-trans feminists believe that when trans people share our experiences, we're somehow erasing women. Apparently, they are fighting for the exclusive right to be oppressed. Weird flex. They're the first ones in my comment section, like, you ugly, pathetic man. You're making a mockery of women's... Darling. I'm not a woman. I am literally a knockoff Muppet. I look like all the Sesame Street characters at the same time. And I still look better than you. Because last time I checked, believing in the same stuff as Putin does, like gender fluidity is a crime against humanity, it's just not really a cute look. They're so upset with us trans people. They say that we keep on making up new genders, making up new pronouns, making up new words. I don't know who else is going to tell you this, but all words were made up. In fact, every single word that I'm currently speaking to you in this moment in time was once, in fact, made up. Plot twist, invent was invented. So, if you're ideologically opposed to made-up words, I wouldn't want to yuck your yum. That's a brave stance. Shouldn't that mean you should stop speaking altogether? This final issue is very close to my heart and my gut. I'm hearing that some of you do not feel comfortable using the restroom with people like me. I co-sign. As someone living with irritable bowel syndrome, I don't want to use the restroom with me either. I feel like I have a unique POV on this whole conversation. And I have to say, girls, gays, and theys, we're really messing this issue up. We've got to get more inclusive. I say it's time we add even more letters to our acronym. We are now part of the LGBTQ IBS movement. In the LGBTQ IBS movement, we understand that indigestion is the root cause of homophobia. So we need to readjust our movement priorities, okay? We're still gonna have pride marches, 10 of us going to the toilet together for emotional support. On the way, we realized we don't just want gender-neutral bathroom signs, we want cheerleading squads with bold Comic Sans font saying, "It's going to be okay. You've got this." We want free tampons and Pepto-Bismol in every stall. We want people to stop erasing biology. People poop. And yet, we live in a shit-shaming culture that has systemically erased the experiences of pooping people from mainstream media representation. We have been gaslit, actually gaslit, into thinking that people walk around not entertaining one of life's greatest questions. When and where can I take my next shit? And that's why transgender people, on behalf of biology, say, we demand a minimum of 2 pooping scenes in every rom-com. Because how else are you supposed to know that you love the guy unless you feel comfortable enough to take a Titanic-sized shit in his studio apartment? I said, I'm just a girl boy standing in front of the world, asking probiotics companies to hire transgender people as brand ambassadors. And we're gonna go to comedy clubs across the world and say there is no gender crisis, there is just a gastrointestinal crisis. And if you are more concerned with who's in the stall next to you versus your own gut bacteria health, then you need to get your shit together. Our train is delayed, and I'm late for lunch with a boy I like because his smile makes me feel a little bit less lonely. And this feels like a working definition for love these days. In this city where it's possible to be surrounded by the warmth of more than 1 million apartment lights and still feel cold. The lights turn off, and it's one of those rare moments when we're forced to look up from our screens and remember that we exist outside of them. They tell us that a man jumped in front of the train, that he died upon impact, so we just sit there in silence as they remove his remains from the tracks. And some part of us is happy because this is the first time in a long time we've been forced to feel like something greater than ourselves in the city, where sometimes it takes an accident just to remember what the purpose of a body is to begin with anyways. The lights turn on, the train starts moving, and the woman next to me starts complaining, asks why that man couldn't have taken a bottle of pills before leaving the house, how selfish he was to delay others with his own death. I want to hug her, say, remind me the purpose of arm. I want to love her, say, remind me the purpose of heart. But I remember that this is America, where bodies fall on streets like discarded leaves, only touching accidentally, as we all tumble onto these cities we grew up with, circling on maps saying, remind me happiness, and somehow convinced ourselves that they did. The same way we learned about the borders between countries so well that we built walls around them, call them mine. This is America, where pain is a ritual required to conduct in private. An elaborate symphony on mute, call it, he lived to be 92 years old, not he hated himself for 30 of them. Call it, he died in his sleep peacefully, not the stroke tore him to pieces. Call it accident, not no health care. Call it casualty, not calculation. To live in this country is to live in a constant state of illusion. Is to be 30 people underground on a train, unable to hold one another and weep. Is to sit there in silence until we forget just how much death is required in the soil to give birth to such beautiful denial. And I want to text the boy above ground, ask, have you ever been to a funeral with complete strangers? But instead, I look at the woman next to me, the one who just told a dead man to die more considerately. And I remember that to live in this country is to already attend a funeral with complete strangers. How many ghosts does it take before a cemetery can call itself a country? To live in America is to blame the dead for their own death, not the country for creating the conditions that already killed them before they caught up and made things more clear for the rest of us. To live in this country is to apologize for the sadness, to erase the hurt, to numb the pain, to deny that we might have difficulty waking up in the morning, that we may see a pill coming in the place of the train, that we may wonder what it would finally feel like to hold the captive attention of a funeral of strangers. So I want to hug that woman, say, remind me trust, say, sometimes silence feels like the highest pitch of screaming, say, this is the first time in a long time I've been forced to publicly mourn death, and there is something beautiful about that. What if we allow the pain to fill us a little bit less empty? But instead, I will remain silent on the train. I will get off at the next stop. I will have lunch with the boy I like because his smile makes me feel a little bit less lonely. I will apologize for being late. I will no longer have a word for a type of loss that is so distant it is intimate. After lunch, I will get back on the train. I will remember. I will soon forget. I forgot that growing up in Texas was traumatic. So at the start of the quarantina, I made the unwise decision to spend quarantina with my mother, thinking it would bring us closer together. I was wrong. I realized it was not going to be a sustainable strategy after I asked her to take my outfit of the day photo in the front yard. She said no, because she didn't want the neighbors thinking that she had hired a cross-dressing hooker. Naturally, I was offended. I said, Mom, I'm not hot enough to be a cross-dressing hooker. And you, my dear, are half responsible for that fact. After I got bored of baking banana bread during quarantina, I started to follow Instagram self-help gurus, the ones with questionable font choices, and I found myself doing inner child work. I refer to it as spiritual baking. That's less traumatic. I learned from them that my entire personality is a trauma response. Here I was thinking that I liked myself. And now I'm like, is that me or my armor forged in the context of childhood neglect? Shit just got really real for me. I'll be shopping for something and say it's like a lamp. It's like, do I like this lamp because I like this lamp? Or because it makes me feel seen? I keep staging my fundamental need to be loved through inanimate objects. That's where I'm at in my healing journey. I just have some questions for those of you in therapy. What's the point in healing? When now, I just have a more expansive vocabulary to describe how fucked up I am, but I still feel fucked up. That seems pretty fucked up to me. Like healing some sort of pyramid scheme. So I quit that whole online healing stuff. I was done with that. I wanted to be around in-person healing. People who believed in mandatory journaling at the club, that level of healing. So I moved to Los Angeles. What an awful idea. In LA, they self-care so much, they only care about themselves. When asked what their favorite book is, 12 out of 10 LA people respond, NA, not applicable. Take me back to New York, where at least people lie about reading. In LA, they mistake hiking as a personality. Listen, I'm rooting for nature, okay? She's had my back. It's the backdrop of my selfie for like 20 years. Showing up, no glam team, no union, getting paid with exposure and visibility. I owe her everything. But that does not mean I have to like hiking. I am already oppressed. Why would I need more resistance? In LA, even the street harassment is subpar. I mean, look at me. There is so much material here. Hello? That's why when I was being born, I was chatting with God. And I was like, hey girl, promise me one thing. Don't allow straight men to harass me down there. Only entrust this material with gay people. Straight men don't read. How are they supposed to read me? And then God ghosted on me, which is why we've been using he pronouns for him ever since. I'm walking down Hollywood Boulevard with me and my Muppet crew of friends. And this dude bro comes up to us and he shouts, gays! Really, girl, gays? Okay, this is not the second grade anymore, sweetie. Where's some of that anonymous Reddit energy, all right? You've had about 15 years to come into your homophobia by now, and you were locked up for the last year during quarantina, and this is your first opportunity to harass a faggot of this caliber. And you're showing up with that mediocre energy, men disappointing us once again. So I had no choice but to street harass him back. I was rooting for you! We were all rooting for you! And you're gonna come here with that defeatist attitude? Give me something to write poetry about, not comedy, goddammit! So I assembled a crew of 7.5 non-traditional spiritual practitioners to heal my trauma. Do not judge me, New York. I needed a team. My last foray into healing involved me being the only Indian at the yoga studio. I don't recommend it. I don't. Here I was trying to focus on my internal journey, but the minute I pull up to the studio, they're like, oh yeah, the culture has arrived. Authenticity has entered the chat. Guruji is gonna show us how it's done. Meanwhile, the white chick in the corner is so flexible, she looks like a freaking Auntie Zan's pretzel. But I can't be culturally insensitive to myself these days, so I glare, which is code word for teach me. The instructor is looking fierce in Lululemon. She says something to me in Sanskrit. I have no idea what it means. But I'm like, Mom, like I felt that. She does this pose, I don't know what it's called, where you go like this or something. And then suddenly, like, everyone's turning around. Like, oh yeah, Alok's Indian, so they're gonna show us how to elaborate on the move. They must be so flexible, their foot's about to enter their ass, and then it's gonna exit their ass, and then they're gonna fart, and it's gonna sound like, and make the entire room levitate into spiritual enlightenment. Instead, I invent a new yoga pose called panic attack, where you assume position on the floor and you don't actually do anything. Because contrary to popular belief, healing should not require labor. But as I'm there on the floor, I remember that my grandmother used to spin around on her head every morning, and I can't even do a child's pose without breaking a sweat. So I'm reactivated in my fundamental trauma that I'm never gonna be good enough for my family, and I'm breaking down on the floor of the yoga studio when I realize cancel culture is real. It's Indians quitting our memberships to yoga studios en masse. I don't wanna do this anymore. It's too much work. I just wanna heal and for it to be easy. My team says meditation would be a better fit for me. Turns out, there are people who get paid to tell you to breathe. There are people who get paid to breathe, which makes all of us exploited workers when we could be breathing influencers. I hired a hypnotist to work on meditation with me via Zoom. You have to have been there. She tells me that there's two kinds of breath. Unhealed people practice fight or flight breath up here. Healed people practice diaphragmic breath down here. You have to swallow the breath, girl. Choke on the breath. Deep throat the breath. Send the breath from your mussy to your bussy. Healed bitches bottom for breath. That's what sign me up. Wow, yes. She tells me to close my eyes, focus on my breath, and report back what I see. I'm gonna use I statements here because I don't want to invalidate anyone else's experiences in the room. In my experience, I identify as having eyelids, which obstruct vision when I close them, rendering me incapable of sight. But apparently when you're healing from trauma, you're supposed to close your eyes and see things, which feels like an extension of the trauma if you ask me. I thought I had childhood trauma, but imagine telling your parents you want to be a hypnotist when you grow up. Like, they hate your ass. But then I'm like, you wouldn't really need to tell them if you were good at your job, you could have just hypnotized them. But that, I start feeling a lot of performance anxiety because there's a lot of pressure to heal these days, so I lied. Lying is a sacred Indian healing modality, passed down across generations. I learned it from my father. I said, I see cat dog. She says, wow, the cat dog. Ooh. Is there a door behind cat dog? Why does every meditation coach sound like Jennifer Coolidge on edibles? Why would there be a door in the cosmos? I'd like to think spiritual transformation is more chic, okay? Nobody wants to come here if it's fugly. Hire one of those girls from Selling Sunset. This is a bust. It's hard for me to close my eyes and pretend to see things. I'm only good at multitasking when it comes to self-sabotaging and blaming other people for it. But then I see her, the eternal Mother Earth goddess. She looks like Scarlett Johansson, who looks like me, who looks like Scarlett Johansson. She says, alaka, loka, laka, laka, aloka. How do I say that? Laka, loka. I say, skalata. How do I say that? Skululu, skala, skululu, skulula. How do I heal skulula, okay? I just keep on putting on chic outfits and people keep on trying to attack me. It's really awkward, skalala, okay? It feels like the only place I feel safe is the stage. Like there's a frame of reference for this. Like I'm some sort of freak show just here to entertain. Skululu tells me to shut up. And she tells me that I get too intellectual when I focus on my oppression. And then I need to bring it back to my body. Okay, so my guru Skululu told me that we have bodies. And that our bodies are important. Western science recently discovered that. And my mind was blown, and she told me that we have what is called a vagus nerve that travels from the mussy to the bussy. And the way that you heal is you send an energetic shaft, no size queens, only a little bit here, an energetic shaft down from the mussy to the bussy. It goes something like this. Yu-Gi-Oh! And level 1 of healing. You unlock the Pokemon Harco chakra to advance to level 2 of the healing journey. Yu-Gi-Oh! And level 2 of healing. You defeat Bowser 14 times to advance to level 3 of the healing journey. Yu-Gi-Oh! And level 3, you find the Dragon Ball Z nestled in your left bussy cheek. Retrieve the Dragon Ball. Be a little gentle. Cough her back up. Gentle. Hold her up to the sun. Realize that all transphobia is a mere illusion of the mind. Nothing is real except for biology! Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.